Here's your report.
Oh, thanks, Jane. I wish I could hire someone just like you.
Try LinkedIn Hiring Pro. It's more than a job board. It's like the recruiter you always wished you had. Hiring Pro uses real-time insights to match your role to LinkedIn's unique network of professionals and delivers a short list of best fit candidates. You'll spend less time sorting applicants and more time talking to the right people.
Let's do it. You're irreplaceable, Jane, but another you would be great.
Hire right the first time. Post your job for free on LinkedIn today at linkedin.com/quality.
Hear that? That's now Crispy and McCrispy strips meeting Creamy Caesar sauce. Sounds extra crispy. Caesar sauce at McDonald's for a limited time. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Hello, difference makers. You are listening to A World of Difference. This is a podcast for the people who still believe that how we lead matters, that the conversations we have across difference, across cultures, across the distance between where we are and where the world needs to go can actually change things. I am Lori Adams Brown, and for over 5 years, I have been bringing global leaders, authors, and change makers to one table. 155,000 downloads, 800 countries, a top 3% podcast, and one conviction that has not changed. The right conversation at the right time with the right people shifts everything. If you are here, you are already a difference maker. And if you want to go deeper, the Difference Makers community is waiting for you at patreon.com/a world of difference. $7 a month, the price of a latte, bonus conversations, voting power, and a seat at the table where this conversation continues. The link is in the show notes. And welcome to this week's episode. I hope it inspires you. Welcome to the A World of Difference podcast. I'm Lori Adams Brown, and this is a podcast for those who are different and want to make a difference. Hey, difference makers, it's Lori, and this is the last stop in my July Encore series, Leading Through Change. And I saved one of my very favorites from my good friend here at the end, Maria Angela Calmet. She's lived and led across Peru, the Netherlands, and Silicon Valley here, and she opens with a metaphor about two fish and water that many of you may have heard and remembered, and we need in our conversations today. If you work across borders or lead a team that does, this one belongs in your queue. And if this month gave you something, the fastest way to say things is a quick rating or review. It's how the next leader who needs to hear these finds the show and these conversations. I'll be back in August with brand new conversations. I hope your month of July has been great. Hi, Maria. A very warm welcome to our audience here at A World of Difference podcast. It's so exciting to see you today. How are you?
Hi, Lori. I'm very excited too. Thank you for having me.
It's going to be fun. We've already enjoyed being together in person here in the Bay Area a few times, including having coffee here where I live in the South Bay and seeing each other at How Women Lead events, How Women Invest. And it's really exciting to get to have this conversation. We first met at our Get on Board Week in Palo Alto for, helping women get on corporate boards at that event. And I just had the conversation with you where we immediately connected on cross-cultural, intercultural, as it intersects with business and the academia aspect of it all. And so I'm really excited because this audience is going to absolutely love everything you have to say today. So I'm really looking forward to getting into it. But let's first start off, give us a little bit about maybe some of the experiences that have formed you and shaped you as a person. So what are the cultures that have formed you, and how do you sort of identify when people ask you? You don't have to say where you're from because that's a hard question for a lot of people. But yeah, what are the cultures and places that have formed you?
So there's three main cultures that have really formed me. One is Peru, the Peruvian culture, the Netherlands, the Dutch culture, and then the States, so the American culture. And I was born in Missouri, in the States, moved to Peru at a very young age with my parents. Both my parents are Peruvian. So I grew up in Peru. And then I moved to the Netherlands for a couple of years to work. And then after that, lots of things happened, but then I moved back to the States. So I've been living already in the States for almost 5 years now. And these have really been the cultures that have shaped me. And even as I see my own profile, let's say I have a lot of things that are very Peruvian, a lot of things that are very Dutch, a lot of things that are very American, and I'm this kind of mixed of the different cultures and different places that I lived in. And that's really, I think, what makes people who have lived in so many different countries so authentic, because I get to pick and choose the best things of all the different cultures, and you choose to adapt to those.
I love it. And this is one of the things that we really connected over because so many in this audience will relate to that, whether you have been raised as an expat kid or you're an expat yourself or you're an immigrant or you've moved between countries and cultures at all. Many people will have similar experiences to what you said, where you just sort of choose these parts that form you. And then sometimes it's not even necessarily a choice. You don't always realize that what you're doing is something that's cultural. So like I remember when I met my husband and we had been dating for a while. And then I took him on a trip to Venezuela with me and he had never been there. We met in the States. He had grown up in Thailand and India. And when he went to Venezuela, he was like, everybody walks like you. And I was like, well, it's not me. It's the culture. So sometimes you think that it's personality, but it's really the culture. And you've created and you speak quite a bit on all of this topic and the nuances of it. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about what led you to create Allopoli.
Sure. So Allopoli means it's allo, that means different, and poly, which means community. So it's how to get people from different communities together. And the reason why I created Allopoli was because I want to help companies and teams be the best that they can be. I want to help companies and teams reach their full potential. And that's via cultural competence frameworks and tools, as well as identifying those hidden biases or unconscious biases that we have. So by implementing these different cultural tools and identifying the biases, I am able to help teams, help companies minimize those conflicts so that they can maximize their either their team performance or just company performance overall.
It's so
And
exciting. It
really,
really is.
I know it's one of the things that I really enjoy, and I guess that's really one of my purpose in life is to share knowledge and also to help people become the best leaders that they can be, or the best persons that they can be, the best person they can be. And Allopoli really is part of my journey to do this. The first time that I did this, and we talked about it before, is my book, Lideresa, which is a leadership book for women. And the reason why I did that was so that I could share my knowledge and share my experiences with others. So ideally, I, as a leader, went through so many mistakes, so many things that happened. If I can share them with you so that you cannot make these mistakes, I mean, hopefully it will ease your way to becoming the best professional that you can. And what I also talk about the book and what I share with Allopoli also is my mistakes. We oftentimes hear about all the successes and all the great things that people achieved. And in this book and within Allopoli, I open up about the things that I did wrong. I did this wrong. I did this mistake. I learned this way, and this was the outcome that I eventually overcame and was able to be successful. And with Allopoli, it's very much the same. That instead of women empowerment, it's actually cultural competence. Because for me personally, that was one of the most challenging experiences that I had, moving from different countries, learning to speak new languages, adapting to culture. And again, I made so many mistakes. If I had these tools before moving or before leading teams in different continents, that would have helped me so much more. Or, I mean, there's always going to be cultural shock, but at least I would have had the tools to best deal with this culture shock. And ideally, this is what I want to help leaders with. It's you're leading a team that might have, different cultures, and not necessarily different culture comes from a different country. It can also be subcultures within that same country, and you're leading a team that are, let's say, from different cities from your same country. And with that, it's really, how do you identify these unconscious biases that are cultural so that you can lead your team better? There's a couple of frameworks that I use, but in one, for example, you identify the similarities and differences that you have so that you can actually focus on those differences to provide value instead of judging them or minimizing them. And in the others, it's 5 cultural dimensions. And some of them, for example, is how direct or indirect you are. Are you really focused on relationship or on tasks? Are you egalitarian or hierarchical? So all these different things that you really don't know that you are that way. And I help people and teams identify it. And there's one really fun photo that I use, or picture, where you can see it's 2 fish in a bowl, and a fish bowl full of water, and they're swimming, having a great time. And one of the fish asks the other, "How's the water?" And then the other fish is like, "What's water?" Because and that's actually culture. These are the things, and these are the things that I help teams and leaders identify. What are these things that are so natural to them or so hidden that they actually aren't aware, like the fish that's not, it's swimming in water all the time, but it's not really aware that water exists, what's water.
Yeah, it's such a powerful metaphor. I've heard people describe cultures like the ocean we swim in, the air we breathe. You just take it for granted, right? When you're in it and you don't even acknowledge it. And that, sociologists, anthropologists have really helped people have this lens. Like, what if you take off the glasses of your culture? And that's sort of what you're helping people do. I'm wondering about this with you. Why is cultural competence important, especially for today's leaders? What have you seen with that?
So lots of reasons, really. um, I have here, if you look at um, well, cultural competence, first of all, is one of the future's skills to have. According to the World Economic Forum, it's in the Future of Jobs Report 2025, global citizenship is one of the top next skills to have. And this is supported also by the Inter-American Development Bank. Having said that, it's the way that I share or try to explain cultural competence and why it's important is with a tree analogy. And this tree analogy actually comes from a Pierian. And it's, imagine 2 trees, 2 separate trees, and you can see those trees, you can see the trunks, you can see the leaves, you can see the flowers. In one tree, you have flowers, let's say, that are blue, you have long leaves. And in the other one, you have flowers that are red and that have short leaves. Those are the things that we can see. And in culture, those are the visible things of culture, the language that we speak, the way that we dress, the way that we behave. Um, these are the different things that we can visualize in culture. However, all these things really stem from the roots. And the roots are really our beliefs and our assumptions, the way that we see the world, all these different things that have shaped, let's say, our flowers or our leaves or our branches. And
Mm.
cultural conflict really stems when we try to explain or understand the visual things, the the flowers, the leaves, those branches from the other tree with our own roots. So
Mm.
understanding, why does this tree have this color or this colorful flower when ours is completely a different color? Because it's based on our own roots, on our own assumptions, on our own values and belief system. And that's what I help people do. And that's why really it's so important for cultural competence to be developed by leaders, or for leaders to focus on that, because without that, again, going back to unconscious bias, we believe that everyone has the same values that we have. We believe that everyone has to have the same beliefs that we have. And once, as a leader, if you try to develop projects or lead a team, and you tend to minimize, oh, yes, because we are all, let's say, human, or we are, we're all members of this company, we are very similar. And yes, you can be very similar. But this stems from an assumption that the values in each person of your team are the same values as your values, or the belief
Mm-hmm.
system from every single person in your team are exactly the same as yours.
Yeah. Big
And
mistake.
exactly. So this is why really it's important to have cultural competence in leadership, so that we can really understand and just either style switch, or at least be curious enough to learn that, oh, they actually are different from me, and learn more about that.
Yeah. And increasingly, we've been saying this for years now, but the world is becoming such a smaller place with how we work and these distributed teams. And not just because we're here in Silicon Valley, but this is true in Taipei and Singapore and in, Rio and everywhere. There's so many people that are working in places where they're constantly, working with a team virtually or in person, where people have different cultural values they're bringing in. And you mentioned these Hofstede's cultural dimensions. And, Erin Meyer with her culture map has really applied those to the business context specifically. It's been really helpful to a lot of people. So when you think about these competencies, maybe do you have an example of a situation maybe where there were two different worldviews showing up? Maybe it was around the way communication happens, whether it's, low context or high context, or maybe it's time orientation, or maybe it was something around how decisions get made. Was it more consensus based, or was it more, the boss makes a decision, everybody gets in line and nobody questions? Do you have any examples of where you've seen that really clash?
Oh, so many. Trying to pick some. Um, One that, I've been involved in decision-making scenarios where it's very egalitarian and also very hierarchical. In the egalitarian, it was amazing because you would be sitting next to a CEO, and it really didn't matter if that person was an intern, that person was going to be heard. The decision
Mm-hmm.
ultimately laid within the CEO, but that person really, she or he had a voice and could speak to them. Hierarchical, it's just the management team that speaks, or managers or heads of department, and really the interns or the assistants, or the entry level people, they really don't speak up that much. It's more allowing the managers to speak up or make the decisions. So with that, it's really interesting to see how decisions are made in different cultures, and to respect that and understand that. Um, However, for me, I guess the most interesting aha moment, let's say, about culture was, I was working at a multinational company. I was leading the sustainability projects in Africa. And that company at the time was building a new factory in Egypt. So I was talking to the person in charge of that project in Egypt, and he asked me if I knew the engineer that was in charge of building the factory. And I actually knew him. He was a friend of mine in the Netherlands. I knew his family, I knew his daughter, I knew his wife. And he asked me, well, how is he? And I said, well, he's a great engineer. He's already built all these different factories for the company around the world. So he was really an amazing engineer. And then he asked me, well, but how is he as a person? And I just stopped, because I really didn't understand. Why are you asking me, why is he as a person? How is he as a person? When you should be really, at least in my mind, you should be focusing on, does this person know how to effectively or efficiently build a factory? Is this person going to be able to build this factory within the allotted frame of time and within the resources? Not really if it's a good person. It's obviously important, but that wouldn't have been my first question to ask about that person, right? Um, And he said no, because if he's not, let's say, a good husband or a good colleague or a good father, then how can I trust that he's going to be uh, good in this job? How is he going to be trustworthy? And that for me was the aha moment. It's, oh, this is really how culture sometimes focus on relationship building rather than task. I myself am a bit in between, but it's really important. And for cultures that really focus on relationship building, you need that trust. It doesn't matter if you are the best at your job or the best at what you're doing, if there's no trust, nothing's going to happen. And the project probably, it's not going to happen really. And well, when you are task-based, you can actually get people from all over the world online and just get them to do a project, and they really don't care who's working on the other side of the screen. They'll be able
Yeah.
to just tackle the problem. And it was this moment where, oh my God, this is really someone whose way of thinking is very different from mine, and this is amazing. It sparked that curiosity. It's like, oh my God, I didn't know, that people could think this way.
Mm.
So yeah, lots of examples.
It's so incredible. And I think, this is why I truly believe this cultural competency, the global mindset, has been acknowledged as such a key leadership core competency in the future of work, because the more we interact across cultures, the more we need that curiosity instead of a judgment about how the culture is showing up in the workplace. And the more we can hear from each other and do our work better and be better leaders, like what you said you wrote your book about. Sometimes it's just a matter of that knowledge. This culture operates this way. And then, you don't have to operate that way. But what you do need to do in a global workforce is understand and be curious about why people are showing up this way. And maybe you'll have something that adds to your leadership and you'll want to adopt too, because it's something you never considered. As we think about these competencies, though, what other key competencies do you consider are important for leaders?
For leaders, especially, there's 4 things that I consider that are most important, and it's effective communication, developing talent, visualizing the impact, and think solutions. These are really the things that I focus more in my book. And it's, again, effective communication, not just the dimensions that we're looking at, or direct, indirect, or high context, low context culture, but it's really understanding who your target audience is and adapting the way that you communicate to them. In my experience, you can, if you are in a town hall meeting, the way that you are going to present the information has to be very, very different than if you are, let's say, presenting to the management team. Very, very different audience. You might be even be talking about the same thing or presenting the same thing, but the way that you deliver the information has to be very different. Then with, let's say, developing talent is, how do you focus on developing the people that are around you? But I focus here, we usually associate leaders with people who have a team. And I want to emphasize that you can be a leader also without having a team. You can lead upwards, you can lead downwards, you can lead sideways. So it's all the different ways that you can actually develop talent. Not necessarily your own team, but you can develop talent as a mentor. You can develop talent also as a colleague. All these different ways that you can develop talent within the company. Then the third thing is visualizing impact. What I've seen is that sometimes people focus on the team, as in their team, let's say, their functional area, let's say marketing, finance, operations, supply chain, but not as a company. So this creates really these silos of us versus
Yeah.
them. And the more that you think the impact that this is going to have beyond let's say, your area, that function, really, that's where you understand how the impact ripples throughout the company. It's the one change in marketing can have a change in finance, can have a change in supply chain, can have a change in operations. It's visualizing really that impact, minimizing the silo mentality, the us versus them mentality, and really understanding that the company is your team. And whatever that you do, how does it really impact all the other different areas or all the other jobs when you're presenting a new idea or when you want to change something? And the last one, it's think about solutions. And this is not to say that you just have to, provide solutions and never provide problems or ask for advice. No, not at all. But it's, let's say, if there's a challenge, try to come up with some solutions and talk about those. Um, as a leader, one of the things that I worked a lot with my team was, if there's a challenge, what do you think is the best way to go forward? What is the best solution to do? And not just expect me to know that, And what usually works is, hey, I thought about 3 different solutions. I think that the best way to go with was solution A. What do you think? But it's, of
Mhm.
course, if there are problems, really bring them up, because that's what supervisors are there for, right?
Yeah.
It's to help you out.
Yeah.
But then if you really want to lead a team, and then because afterwards you are going to be in that position where you have to come up with solutions as well, or at least decide which one is the best solution um, to select given all the resources and all the information that you have at that time. So that's really the challenge. Um, and focus on that. It's try to focus on the solutions or provide more solutions whenever you are facing a challenge, instead of just ask or waiting for someone to offer you or to provide you with that solution.
That's really good. I like that because it allows this exchange of perspectives, which is, what we really love here about bringing guests on and learning from each of your perspectives. And I think that, when we have these different cultures that have formed us, then the perspectives are broad within one person, even like you. And so, you mentioned you have this book, Lideresa, and you created this framework specifically for women in Latin America. We have a lot of Latinas here as well in this, part of California. What are some of the unique cultural dynamics you think that women leaders face in Latin America specifically compared to maybe other regions where you've worked across all these different continents?
Um, so first and foremost, I think it's role models. And even as I was doing the research for my book, I could see lots of role models in Europe or in the States, lots of, literature written about this, but not so much in Latin America. I'm happy to say that it's improved since I wrote the book, which was almost 4 years ago, I think. Um, but that was one of the main things, right? It's most of my role models back then were men. I had the privilege of having some role models and some mentors who were women, but most of them were men. Um, and I think that in Latin America, this is something that's improving, but we still have a long way to go. And then there's one thing also that well, it's Latin America still has somewhat of a chauvinistic culture.
Hmm.
So, and again, this going back to unconscious bias. There are a lot of things that people still believe that should be done by men or that should be done by women. And it's very challenging to really tackle and change the paradigm, because and according to some of those countries, that way of seeing the world in this chauvinistic way, it's actually a public policy problem. So it
Yeah.
goes way beyond companies. It goes way beyond NGOs, way beyond the government. It's culture. Um,
Hmm.
so that's also something that I brought to light in the book.
I love that you bring that out, and certainly there's nuance all around Latin America and how that shows up, right? Because it's a ton of countries. We're not, you can't say it's all the same from Argentina to Mexico or
Mhm.
everything in between. But I was recently in Mexico and I was staying in a hotel, and I was speaking with the one of the cleaner ladies. She was on the elevator with me, And, was just asking her perspective. There had been the party for the Mexican Revolution where they got in the plaza and they were singing, and it was really beautiful and so much fun. And then the next morning in the same spot in front of this teatro in Guanajuato, they were protesting the government. And it's a woman president, Claudia Sheinbaum, who recently was even assaulted sexually, like her chest was
Yes.
grabbed, right? And so she's speaking out about that. And so you're seeing, wow, even a woman president is still having to deal with these kind of power dynamics and, public shaming and assaults of women, even in a public space. And, as she's spoken about it, not only is she pressing charges, but she's saying this happened to all women, which, so I was asking this woman her perspective on all that. And, she just said, it's very patriarchal here, even in this hotel where she was working. She's like, there's just a lot of machismo and what it means to be a woman here. There's a lot of ways we're seen, even with a woman president. And we can't expect a woman president to change a history and a system that was built by men for all these years. It's going to take several presidencies. This is not like a one-person thing. She can do these small changes, but changing an entire system and history of a large nation like Mexico and changing all of the work environments in addition to the political environment is more than one person could possibly do, especially when it's, been so entrenched for so long. And so what is your perspective on that when people are trying to bring change as women leaders, maybe in Latin America specifically?
I think that we are in the moment to try to do this and to actually lead change. And again, we're talking about a culture that's been there for hundreds of years. So it's not probably that we are going to see some changes during our lifetime, but most of the big changes they will come after, after we die already for, let's say, our grandkids or great grandkids. That's when the change is really going to be there. But at the same time, it's up to us really to start doing those building blocks. There were a lot of women who started doing this. And I even say, as an example, let's say I have a lot of like people that I know that who are, let's say, 70 and older. And when they were growing up, their mothers didn't have the right to vote.
Yeah,
So you really need to remember that, change takes time. And now it's something that we all take for granted. But, it's in the 20s, really, they didn't have votes and it wasn't a universal vote in all countries. Different countries started having votes for women in different years.
yeah,
But with that, it's this time to actually start showing women that there are role models that they can reach up to. It's time to embrace also the feminine qualities of leadership, because you have, and I'm not saying that the masculine qualities of leadership are wrong, because
right,
we need both. The thing
right.
is we need both. We need masculine let's say skills, and we also need feminine skills. But let's try to embrace those more, and that's supporting each other, dialogue, looking at different, let's say, ways that the projects or the things can impact people who are working in that, or the different dynamics for people who are in that company. So it's really an interesting time to start developing all these things. And just because I don't think we're starting or think we are in the middle of this, but we still have a long way to go, but not lose faith, because just as it's the first step for us and we're putting these things on the table where we're talking about it, that's going to be really the basis for the future generations to be more open with the idea of all these things, or at least feminine leadership that we're talking about.
I agree. It's when you think about the long history, it also helps us look into the future. And so, in the United States, it was 1920 that women got the right to vote. And, that was my grandmother's generation. And then In Mexico, it was in the 50s, a little bit later than some of the other places. But all that to say, it's very recent, and so it's very fragile. And so keeping that is kind of part of the task here in the United States right now, because there are people who want to repeal the right to vote for women. But it means that you never can take for granted, especially when something is so new, that it's just going to be there, forever and ever. But you've worked across continents. You've worked across South America, North America, Europe, Africa, Asia. When you think back on your career and your experience of working in these different cultures, do you have a moment you could share when your own cultural assumptions were challenged in a way that really maybe fundamentally changed how you approach leadership or business?
I think that's a really good question. One of the ways that really changed the way of how I saw culture and leadership was when I was working in the Netherlands and I experienced firsthand how direct people could be. Before moving to the Netherlands, the way that I experienced directness was it was as if really someone was being mean. Why
Mm.
aren't you sugarcoating things? And
Right.
then, it's like, why do you have to be there? And do you want to see me cry? Almost, it's like,
Right.
why would you say things like that?
Yeah.
And then after being in the Netherlands and experiencing how direct culture is there, it's it was mind blowing to understand that it really one, it has nothing to do with me personally. Two, it has
Mhm.
nothing to do with that the other person as well. It's really it's the idea behind being direct is if I'm not direct with you, then you're going to miss out on an opportunity to learn and to grow.
Mhm.
So why would I sugarcoat it? Because if I sugarcoat it, then you're not going to get the message. You're not going to get the idea. And if you don't get the idea or the message, then how is it that you're going to really strive to make it better or to change? And that's when I said, oh my God, I mean, being direct, it's beneficial to me. And it's beneficial for the other person because if they're asking feedback, I can be direct and just know that I'm not going to be hurting that person's feelings. It's going to be accepted. I mean, it's what I'm going to say, it's going to be accepted and understood that it has nothing to do with, be me being mean or it's if I don't give you a clear message, how are you going to benefit from that? So
Yeah.
that for me was completely groundbreaking and shattering. Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah, I do think there's so many cultural misunderstandings within high context and low context, indirect, direct communication. The Dutch colonized Indonesia, and so my years living there for 10 years, we would encounter, Dutch people on vacation. Maybe, they came to visit where their grandparents had been back in the day or whatever. There's just a lot of Dutch tourism there because it was a colony. And, Indonesians are much less direct, with their communication. There's a lot of triangulation when you need to give feedback, like tell your friend to tell your friend or tell your neighbor to tell,
Mhm.
it's very indirect. And so, but the Dutch were some of the most direct people I ever encountered in that, situation because of how direct their culture is. And you could just see so often how it was like the feelings would get hurt and you started to understand this really is a kindness. They're trying to help you understand if you do this with your baby, it will be better for you. They're not trying to criticize your parenting style or whatever it is, right? They really were approaching it out of kindness. And sometimes those things are hard to see because culture is, like you said, the water we swim in, right? The ocean we swim
Mhm.
in. And this is why this conversation, both in business and in any organization where you work, where there is at least two cultures, which these days there's way more typically, and whether you ever travel outside of your own country or whether you have neighbors moving in your community that are from another culture, this is why the work that you're doing really, really matters for people, and it is really making a difference. I'd love for you to
Mhm.
just, give you
And
another moment
okay,
to say anything you haven't said or, kind of a closing remark, and then also let us know where we can find you.
perfect. Yeah, so oftentimes we think that when we talk about cultural competence or understanding other cultures, it's I don't know, how to the proper ways of saying hi, or how to end an email, or all these different things. But again, going back to the tree analogy, those are the leaves, those are the flowers. What we really need to understand by cultural competence is looking at those unconscious bias. So when we're talking about direct and indirect, it's kindness. You can see that they're direct, but really what you need to understand is the set of values, beliefs, and assumptions that really shape the way people see. So it's not just talking about how to socially interact, if you have to raise your hand or not, kiss on the cheek or not. It's really going beyond that. It's trying to understand the roots, trying to understand how we are similar, how we are different. And once we identify those differences and similarities, how can we actually create value or have these differences create the best value that we have for the team, for the company, or even in your personal friendships as well. It's how to actually promote that value, and not just keep thinking of, oh yes, they're different from me, or it's looking at those roots instead of just staying focused on those flowers or the leaves or the branches. And those are the things that we can see, but not necessarily understand.
Love it. It's a great way to think about it. Well, if people want to find out more about the work that you're doing, or maybe bring you in to speak, or find out where to find your book and all those things, how can they find you?
Of course. So my book is called Lideresa. You can find it on Amazon worldwide. And then my website is Allopoli, so www.allopoli.com. And there you can find me, connect with me, and learn more about cultural competence.
Thank you so much for being on here today and for sharing your perspectives and everything you've learned from living and working around the world and your research. And it's just been incredibly insightful to learn from you today and have this conversation.
Thank you so much, Lori, for having me. I really enjoyed it.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, difference makers, for being here. Not just for listening, for being the kind of person who shows up for conversations just like this one, because you believe the world gets better when we understand each other more. And that is who difference makers are. And you are one of them. There are two ways to go even deeper. On Patreon at patreon.com/aworldofdifference. For $7 a month, you get bonus conversations and community. 25 gets you into the room where the real talk happens, live every quarter with me directly. On Substack, paid subscribers get full essays, no paywall, and a monthly live conversation where I say the things I can't say anywhere else. Links to both of those are in the show notes, and I would love for you to join me in both of those places. If this episode stayed with you, share it with 5 people you know who need this right now. That is how we grow this, and that is how we grow ourselves at the same time. I am Lori Adams Brown. Until next time, difference makers, go keep making a difference.